My name is Daniel Dockin. Welcome to Module 0, Unit 7. The purpose of Unit 7 is to introduce you to the principles of biosecurity, and they are the measures we take to stop invasive non-native plants from spreading. Good biosecurity protects people, property, and the wider environment by reducing the chance of moving propagules from one site to another. It also reduces long-term management costs. If we prevent spread in the first place, we avoid the far higher costs of controlling a new infestation later on. For professionals, biosecurity is not optional. It should be part of everyday operations, from the moment you enter a site to the point you leave. Embedding these practices into routine helps maintain compliance with both legislation and industry standards. This unit will cover what biosecurity is, why it matters, and how to put it into practice at every stage of a project. To put it simply, biosecurity means the steps we take to prevent invasive plants from spreading accidentally. Invasive plants move through propagules, things like seeds or root fragments, and these can be in contaminated soils. Without good biosecurity, these can be picked up on boots, tools, machinery, or even vehicles, and then carried to new locations on-site or off-site. Biosecurity measures need to be applied at every stage of a project, before you enter a site, while you're working, and when you leave. By doing this, you reduce the chance of spreading invasive plants from one side of the site to another. It's a simple concept, but it's one of the most important principles in invasive plant management. We discussed in Unit 1 how invasive plants spread. As a reminder, the first pathway is via the natural environment. Many species disperse naturally. Seeds are blown on the wind, berries and seeds are eaten and dropped by birds, or water carries fragments downstream. The second pathway is via human activity, and this is where biosecurity becomes critical. Propagules stick to boots, clothing, and equipment, and they're moved between sites without anyone realizing. While we cannot stop natural dispersal, we can prevent human-assisted spread. This is where good biosecurity makes a difference, and our aim must be to shut down these pathways as quickly as possible. Good biosecurity starts before you even step onto a site. The first thing you need to do is check yourself. Boots, clothing, and PPE can all carry soil, seeds, or tiny fragments of plant material. A quick inspection and clean before you enter can help prevent carrying propagules onto the site. The same applies to tools or machinery. Tires, tracks, and buckets are common hotspots for contaminated soil. Thorough cleaning before moving between sites is one of the most effective biosecurity measures you can take. Finally, only bring in the equipment you actually need. Every extra tool, vehicle, or item is another potential vector for spread. We must remember that biosecurity starts before the first step onto site. If we don't control what enters, we risk introducing invasive plants ourselves. On commercial, brownfield, or development sites, biosecurity needs to be tightly managed and clearly communicated. Start by marking contaminated areas with fencing or signage, and control movement through designated haulage routes and access points. All contractors working on the site must be briefed on the biosecurity plan, ideally at induction. This shouldn't be a one-off. Toolbox talks and updates are important to reinforce good practice throughout the project. Don't be afraid to address breaches of biosecurity with individuals, or where required, senior management. Avoid disturbing contaminated soil wherever possible. High-risk activities such as site clearances, levelling, or excavations need special control measures since they can easily spread propagules across a site. Tools, machinery, and vehicles should be cleaned regularly during operations. When machinery is moving in and out of a contaminated area and not just at the end of the day. If you are creating temporary waste areas, it must be stored securely, preferably on a hard standing, and removed promptly for licensed disposal. This temporary waste area will also need its own biosecurity, such as fencing, to ensure it is not spread. At the end of the job, a final clean down should be carried out, and waste transfer records are required if soil has been removed from site. Strong communication and proper planning are what make these biosecurity measures effective on complex sites. On residential properties, biosecurity measures must be simple and easy to follow. Communication and education with the homeowner or tenant is essential. You need to explain clearly why no cutting, composting, or soil movement is allowed, and the potential repercussions if they do. If the infestation crosses a boundary, it's also important to involve the neighbours, taking a holistic approach to the management of the infestation. Temporary fencing or markers can help prevent accidental disturbance, especially during gardening, general maintenance, or even children playing. It's likely the homeowner won't like large orange mesh barriers, so perhaps consider something which is more suited for the site. After all, this is someone's personal home, not a commercial building site. If any waste should be created, accidentally or intentionally, it should securely be bagged and stored before being taken for licensed disposal. Garden bins or compost heaps are not suitable for invasive non-native plants. Try to keep access routes as simple as possible. Fewer movements in and out of contaminated areas reduce the chance of spread. At the end of the job, make sure all tools and footwear are cleaned down thoroughly before leaving site. This is extremely important if you are attending several properties throughout the day, as even a single fragment carried could start a new infestation elsewhere. Biosecurity is most effective when it's properly planned for, whether that's for a commercial site or residential property. Before work begins, you should carry out a risk assessment, identifying any high-risk areas and potential pathway spreads, such as vehicle routes, watercourses, or fly tipping areas. Based on this, you can then set up a designated haulage route or access points so that the movement across the site or property can be controlled and predictable. For high-risk sites, particularly commercial sites, it may also be necessary to provide a washdown or brushing stations so that equipment, boots and vehicles can be cleaned before moving on. Everyone who works on the site needs to be trained and briefed on the biosecurity plan. This should include site inductions, regular toolbox talks, all the way throughout the project. Or for residential properties, regular informal discussions with the homeowner, so the message is always being reinforced. Record keeping is essential, and it should consist of logs of inductions, cleaning, but also breaches of biosecurity. This will help to demonstrate compliance and accountability if problems do arise. Finally, plans must be flexible. If site conditions change, the biosecurity plan must change and be updated. A good example is a full site clearance, which is a common first step on many commercial projects. This usually involves large-scale soil movement. If propagules are present and not fenced off when clearance takes place, this is a very real risk of spreading them across the entire site. Good planning is the only way to prevent this from happening. Let's recap Unit 7. We've looked at the principles and practice of biosecurity. Biosecurity means preventing the accidental spread of invasive non-native plants. These plants spread through two main pathways, naturally and human-assisted. We've explored how to apply biosecurity in practice, checking boots and vehicles before entry, erecting fencing, signage, creating designated haulage routes. We've looked at rapid response, why it's essential when biosecurity fails, and when new infestations are discovered, to act quickly. Finally, we saw that biosecurity must be planned and tailored to the site. One of the biggest risks is site clearance, where large volumes of soils are moved. If propagules are present, poor planning at this stage can spread invasive plants across an entire site. The message is simple. Good biosecurity is proactive, planned, and consistent. It's one of the most effective tools a specialist has for stopping invasive non-native plants from spreading.